Okay, let's kick things off. So again, thank you for your patience. Thank you for your flexibility. I guess that's the name of the game these days. And it's pretty on brand with the conversation that we were going to be having today. This conversation that we were planning to have and that we're still going to have, just in a different format, is how to improvise as a music educator, how to maintain a meaningful experience for your students when things don't go as planned. So hopefully today you will still have a meaningful experience, even though it didn't go entirely as planned. So my name is Nick Godso, and I'm on the team here at MusiCounts. And this is our second virtual town hall. The first town hall that we had was 3 or 4 months ago, back in May. And this was when the unthinkable was happening, when we were all confronted with having to pivot how we teach music as usual and teach music from a distance. And back then, we were talking about the tactics that people were using to navigate these completely uncharted waters, and talking about the broader impact that that COVID-19 might have on music education. And now, here we are. It's days from September, and the impact of COVID-19 on music education in Canada could not be more apparent, as we're all still so unsure of what the best way to move forward is. So that's what this conversation is today, because although there's so much uncertainty, there are so many more questions than answers. One thing we know for sure is that we can't rely on a plan. We can't rely on a predetermined path. We have to be ready to be nimble, and we have to be ready to improvise. So that's why I have our 4 exceptional teachers here today to talk to us about. So before we get started, I want to direct everyone to our Facebook page, and there you'll see a place where you can leave comments and join the conversation from there. So while you're listening to this conversation, you have a thought, you have an idea, please feel free to just jot it down there and say hello. Tell us where you teach, what you teach, where you're from, and what you're going through right now. So please keep the conversation going over on our Facebook page. We'll be monitoring that and bringing some of those questions into this meeting. So now I want to give our 4 panelists an opportunity to introduce themselves. So maybe just say a little bit about who you are, what you do, and maybe a sentence about how you're feeling right now heading back to school this year. So Andrew, why don't we start with you?
Hello, everybody. Hello from the East Coast. I'm in Newfoundland. I'm Andrew Mercer, as Nick just said, and I'm an online music teacher. So I teach high school music entirely over the internet. So I've been doing that for 18 years. So before COVID happened, I was in that online area for a long time. So the perspective that I come to a discussion like this is from the point of view of somebody who's been online teaching high school general music courses and instrumental and vocal for many years. So that's basically the context where I come from.
Great. Catherine.
Hi, everybody. I'm here from beautiful Vancouver, BC, more specifically Richmond. And I'm a school administrator. I'm a principal here. I'm in my building. This is my beautiful building, Blair Elementary. And I'm also the district administrator for arts in the Richmond School District. Prior to moving into admin and having the opportunity to do that, I was a full-time music educator and taught band, choir, all the Orff Kodai music, musical theater, that kind of all those realms that happened in K to 7 music in my school district, elementary school. So happy to be here. My thoughts about coming back are. Hold on, and here we go. We can do it. It's just we're going to be moving forward with a lot of steps that are unknown, but I find a little bit of excitement about that, and I'm ready for that to happen.
Awesome. Thanks, Catherine. And Laura Lee. Oh, you're on mute, Laura Lee.
Sorry about that. Hi, everybody. I'm in Aurelia, which is the Sunshine City. I teach at Aurelia Secondary School, and I've been teaching band, guitar for many of those years. I started teaching in 1995, and I'm also treasurer for the Ontario Music Educators Association. I also received the honor of being MusiCounts Teacher of the Year for 2018. For September, let's see, I'm a bit anxious, uneasy, and I just kind of want some questions answered.
Yes, and Jewel.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jewel Castleman, and I teach in Winnipeg, Manitoba, right in the center of Canada. We're having a beautiful sunshiny day here today. And I teach kindergarten to grade 5 music currently at my school. And for September, I think it's just a little anxious going back in with, especially with little guys, because they don't always want to understand. And they're very social and very in each other's faces. And for right now, it's just, yeah, just trying to figure out what to do, and just a little nervous about heading back. But I'm excited to see the kids because I've missed seeing them. So it'll be good to see them all back again.
Terrific. All right. Thanks, folks. So yeah, like I was saying, so much to not be sure about, but one thing is for certain, we're all going to be improvising. And as music teachers, that's something that, once we start to think about it, and I hope that this is what will be teased out in this conversation today, it's something that we're all really used to doing. So how can we hone this experience as improvisers, as musicians, and make the most of what is a very unpredictable situation? So I thought we would start by having each of the panelists tell a bit of a short story about a time where they've had to improvise as an educator and how they are able to make the best of an uncertain situation and how we might be able to apply that to the now. So any takers for who wants to kick that off? How about Laura Lee?
Okay. I'd have to say, I think some of my best ideas have been borrowed by fellow teachers or from fellow teachers. So I think I get inspired by others. So some improvisation. I'm not so sure that I'm going to tell like a specific situation that I was in, but I think we all had to do some improvisation this last spring. And we all had to sort of make things work with what we were given on the fly. So for sure from that, but I think even just in hindsight, when I look back, reading some of the reflections of some of my students, I think a few things that we need to remember is our students always refer to music as their music family. And so even though we're challenged by some of the restrictions that we have, we need to make sure that we're going to make those great memories with our kids in some way, shape, or form. And will things be different? Yes. Will we be able to do the same thing that we did before? Probably not, but that's okay. We'll figure out something else that will be just as exciting and just as cool. And we just need to focus, I think, right now on what we can do, and then do it to the best of our ability and just have fun with your students in your class. So I think that's where I think of the improvisation as a teacher right now.
Awesome. Thanks, Laura Lee. How about you, Jewel?
So I agree with Laura Lee that we did so much improvising when we went to online teaching. We had to find new ways to do things. I made a video with one of my little dogs for my kindergarten and grade 1s, where instead of clapping for the B of bingo, my dog barked. And so it was lots of fun to do those kinds of things. And I've never made so many videos in my life, but I think the one that really struck me was actually the MusiCounts Music Monday. So usually we have a big event. We have 200 students in a gym for our family of school concerts. And instead, we were all isolated. And so I sent out the link for the choir and a link of me singing the song, and just asked the kids to videotape themselves singing part of the song and send it in to me. And I heard from students that I don't often hear from in class. And I'd ask them a few questions such as, what does freedom mean to you? Because it was the Hymn to Freedom anthem, and just how music affects them in their everyday life. And the insight that they came from, even little 6-year-olds and right up to my 11-year-olds, was really great. Some of it was really heartbreaking, that they found freedom was when there weren't bombs going off close to their home. And other people were, when I get to go play with my friends, because I can't play with my friends now, And so we put all those kind of ideas and those comments into a video and shared them with the classroom for our big Music Monday celebration. So it was just trying to bring it online. We were all in new situations. We were all learning, constantly improvising, constantly changing our way of thinking. And for some of those students who were very shy in class, but could do it online, it gives me that opportunity to go, well, let's continue some of that, where they can take the iPad into another room and record themselves singing for me, so that they're not as nervous in front of all their friends in the classroom.
Oh, that's great. Thanks, Jewel. Andrew, what about you as someone who's teaching online all the time? How have you found, what's your experience improvising?
Well, first of all, you asked for a short story, and I'm from Newfoundland, and we don't do short stories. We only do really, really long stories. In the spirit of improvising, I hear Jewel, and I hear Laura Lee speak about things, and right away, I mean, my response is improvise off of what they're doing. And I know, like Laura Lee said, that she improvises on ideas that other teachers and other people in her field have given her, and I think that's critical, especially around now. I mean, if we think about the idea of improvising in a musical sense, improvising is best when it's really done as a group. So if you have 4 or 5 musicians that you that you really respect, and you're sitting with them, your improvising is going to be very creative. It's going to be very exciting. Well, we are a group. We're a band of music teachers here in Canada. So we need to improvise off each other. There's some great ideas, great musical ideas, great educational ideas that are happening all around our country. We need to take these ideas and we need to improvise ourselves on these. Now, if I think back to improvising educationally for me, well, I came online to begin teaching in the late 90s, but I started teaching in high school around 2001, 2002, around then. At that time, there was no such thing as Facebook. There was no such thing as YouTube. Most of the students were on dial-up. So the landscape was very different than what it is now. And in fact, a lot of the tools that we have and a lot of the techniques we have for teaching online or doing anything online, they really weren't invented at that time. So every day was improvisation. And there were some epic fails. And there were some not so epic fails. There were some things that were really great. So that was, in my career, those first few years of teaching online in the early 2000s were a daily improvisation, trying to find out what can be done. What does this new medium give us? So if I can hearken back to that for all of my colleagues across Canada, I would say that we have a lot of tools here now in front of us, a lot of things that can help us cope, not only online teaching, but in face-to-face teaching, of course, as well in this restricted time. So I would say, look to your bandmates across Canada for ideas that you can improvise with. I mean, really, I've taken so many ideas off Laura Lee Matthew, because Laura Lee is a master teacher, and I've seen things that I've heard her talk about things in other meetings, and I've gone away saying, wow, that's really cool. Maybe if I took that and I changed it and did this and did that, and before you know it, it's something really cool. So I would invite everybody, talk to your friends across Canada, music teachers, and find out what they're doing, and then start vamping on what they're doing, start improvising over what they're doing. You're going to find some creative, really cool things you never even dreamed of.
Great. Thanks, Andrew. And Catherine.
Yeah, I was thinking about this question, and I was thinking about being a learner myself, and probably my biggest learning was in the area of improvisation. I had the opportunity to travel to India and study Carnatic music in India. I'm a flautist, so did my degree in flute and voice, and so when I traveled to India, I learned bansuri, which is a Hindustani instrument, Carnatic music, and but what was the improvisation, if I cut to the chase, was that, of course, I had to sit and learn without Western notation. And that was a big jump for me. And so what I learned very, very quickly was to start, like, all the experience I had tells me what to do, but it was the confidence that allowed me to do it. And I had to follow my intuition. I had all this experience behind me, but I was doubting myself, and I had to sharpen some of my other skills, like my listening skills, my ability to follow and have a partner, like a colleague or a teacher. I had a teacher that I sat with and learned. I had to listen better to the music around me and not rely so heavily on this one thing, this Western notation, which I'd come so as a classical flute orchestral player, it just became everything, right? I had to be more vulnerable, be open to having those epic fails, like you say, Andrew, and be open to taking risks and trying things, even if I wasn't sure it was going to work. It taught me to have more compassion for myself and for my students as I help them become musicians, and really hone in on musicality and what the gift of music brings you, versus just being the technician that I had spent so much time trying to be in my early stages of my music career. But I think my biggest lessons of improvisation was to go slow and have patience with myself and patience with the people around me, and be open to not knowing. And any of you readers out there might know Carol Dweck's book, Mindset. If you haven't read it, every educator in the world should read Mindset by Carol Dweck. And my whole school, we've done a study group on it, and I encourage everyone to do it. And it's all about having a growth mindset versus a fixed things that you can do and you can't. So as we move forward, I guess my story around improvisation: go slow, trust in your experience that tells you that you know what to do, because you're master teachers and you know your craft, but it's the confidence that will allow you to go forward in this time of unknown. So those are my big lessons of improvisation. And happy to say I could play many rag and tali after, and I played in temples with my teacher, and it was a great experience. But I did have to surrender and let go of that fixed set, that this is one way of doing things, and that I could learn in a different way.
I love that, Catherine, this idea of letting go, letting you kind of just accepting that something is going to be different, and then having trust that your experience to date will guide you through. Yeah, that's really powerful. Thanks for sharing. So now that we've all kind of set the stage a little bit, talking about improvisation, talking about how we can apply that experience to what we're going through now, let's really bring it into the now. So let's start by talking about, in each of your own contexts, we know that there is a tremendous lack of certainty, but we also know that people are trying to get us information. We all know that you're thinking about how you're going to do music. So I'm curious to hear about how each of you are taking all of the information, even if it's conflicting, even if it's confusing, even if it's overwhelming, and how you're making sense of that to help you push forward as you're going into September. Does anyone want to start tackling that? Laura Lee, sure.
I'll unmute first before I start talking. So I think in Ontario, things are ever changing. And I've been learning this last week that things are changing even again based on boards had put forward certain proposals, ministry approved, and then the ministry has changed their minds and the proposals are now different. So we are, everything is changing from day to day. Tonight, our board, the school board that I'm in, will share what the new plan is. So it will be different than what we initially had thought it was going to be, or what they had initially told us. So I think right now, instead of planning like really the nuts and bolts of what my courses are going to look like, I'm just sort of putting together lists of things that I could do in the classes that I presume that I'm teaching. I know it's different for elementary teachers right now because they don't really know what grade, if they're doing music, if they're not doing music. In a secondary school, I know that prior to July, these were the courses. So I'm just listing out some things. I'm not actually doing a lot of prep work, but I'm keeping a list of ideas. I'm also looking at what are some strategies that I can use for longer class periods. So how do I break up the time within my class? Before it was easy. You do a little bit of playing, you do a lot of playing, a little bit of some written, you go back to playing. We may not be able to be using our band instruments, so I have to think outside the box. What do we have that I can still have the kids actively doing music that doesn't necessarily involve a pencil and paper? So again, I'm just creating lists and looking at how can I break up the day for them, knowing that the classes will be a lot longer than what we normally traditionally had. So even some mind breaks, gathering some videos, creating some playlists, or just organizing playlists for me, that kind of thing. So I think that's where sort of I'm at. I've attended a lot of sessions like this. So again, just sitting and listening and taking in other people's ideas, because then that will jog me to some other ideas, which I can then use later on.
Yeah, this idea of not planning a single way of doing something, but kind of having these different lists, kind of having things ready to go so you can be nimble, so you can be responsive. Yeah, that's terrific. Any response to that, or someone else want to share how they're getting ready? Go ahead, Catherine.
Yeah, I think from the onset, if you imagine planning for a change model. So we're moving away from just a strategy that you might use to strategizing how you're going to implement. So a change model is a new way to look at it, because we're so used to having a plan and saying A, B, C, here are the steps that I'm going to follow for my plan. But I have this wonderful sort of way of thinking that I've arrived at over the years, of just tons of books and things that I've read. And one of them is that we're not in a straight line. We can't follow a straight line. Learning is never a straight line, but it's a series of now points, not new points, but now points. So here's where we are now. And as Laura Lee said, this is what it could look like tomorrow. So I would recommend strategizing for possibilities, and creating a change model, being ready to pivot, being ready to shift, because it could happen overnight. So forging what are your priorities in an in-school model? What are the things that you think are best suited for when you're face to face and you can be together? What really should you be bringing out as your priorities? Probably in the area of the performance and the playing, if you're able to do that. And then what can you save for when you're online, so that you can be able to pivot back and forth? And my recommendation would be that you create these strategies and you take advantage of being together when you can be, to co-create what it will look like when you're not together. So that when you are in that new space, you've already had that conversation with the kids. Well, here we are, right? So this isn't out of the blue, and this isn't cutting me off at the knees. We've talked about this. We knew we could shift. So seeing things as a continuum that could go back and forth, and a series of now points. Here's where we are now. Here's some possibilities. So creating that change model.
Terrific. Thanks, Catherine. Andrew, a lot of that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jewel. Go ahead. Go ahead, please.
Okay, Andrew could have gone.
That's all right.
I think in Manitoba, we've been told that we're going back full days with our students. But then we have, within just the city of Winnipeg, we have 6 school divisions that have all come up with their own strategy kind of plans. So my school division is, there's no elementary or middle school music being offered in September. We've paused it. We haven't suspended it. They aren't saying that it's gone forever, but for the month of September, our job is to go around and be helping, be support for our classroom teachers. So we'll follow our schedule, but we'll be going to the students and helping them with numeracy and literacy, which is what music is all about, right? I mean, literacy is part of it. So I think it's just a matter of, like Catherine said, looking at what we can do right now, strategize for what's going to be happening. We're going into the classrooms. A lot of our classrooms are going to be outside to as much as we can be. And We have one school division that is capping the number of students in a classroom in order to be able to keep the distancing, and other school divisions that are not. So, and then within each division, each school is coming up with their own plan. So my plan for my school isn't going to be the same plan for another elementary school in my division. And so I think we're just looking for some guidance. We're going in, and I think as music teachers, we're in a good position to do this. We're used to being very flexible and going with the flow. And when your stage doesn't show up until the morning of your concert, we deal with it because it is our reality. We have that. We're music teachers because we're flexible, because we're creative, because we're improvising all the time. And I think if anybody's going to be able to handle this fairly well, it's going to be the music teachers. And we know that we've done it. We did it in a week's notice. We were in school and we were out of school in 7 days. And we went from in face-to-face classes to being online and learning all different kinds of platforms. And it was a steep learning curve. It was like a 90 degrees learning curve. It wasn't even a curve. But we did it, and we could, and we survived, and we relied on our co-teachers within our division. I know that in my division, we've already had 3 gatherings together. We actually have one tonight as well, where we're getting together just to talk about what we're going to be doing in September. What can we do to plan? How can we support each other? And staying in that close communication. And I like what Catherine said too about letting your kids know this is where we are right now. We're working in your classroom. I'm coming to you, but eventually you're going to be coming back into my room. And I've had messages from lots of kids with up to June about how much they miss being in the music room. They like that working together, because it's different than sitting in a classroom and working on a math sheet. They're in there, they're creating, they're playing, they're listening to each other, and they're picking up vibes from each other. And they really miss that. And they miss singing in the choir, and they miss seeing their friends in that social kind of situation, because music is very social.
Andrew, as someone who's been teaching music online, like Jewel was saying, we know we can't replicate the sense of community that comes with being in a music class together under normal circumstances. Have you had any success developing ways of fostering community online that you think teachers might be able to leverage, or how do you kind of mitigate that?
Well, absolutely. I guess the first thing, I mean, like that question specifically, kind of it compares the development of community in bricks and mortar or face-to-face situation versus online. There are a lot of parallels between the two. The thing is, we've been 75,000 years as humans developing our way of fostering community. And those things still work, whether they're online or in person. One of the things that I try to make a connection with every single student that I work with, and that means that I talk to them individually whenever I can. That might be as simple as a phone call to the school, because my students are spread all over Newfoundland and Labrador. So it might be as simple as a phone call to a student. I try to do that as often as I can. Try to get situations where I can build rapport with the students and create a very real connection with the students. There are many strategies to do that, to create an environment where the students connect with their teacher. And there's lots of ways of doing that, and I mean, there's things as simple as looking at your camera on a session. So you're trying to make eye contact with the student. I mean, as this is not exactly eye contact, it's probably eye to lens contact, but there's a million different things that we can do to try to build that rapport, create a connection with the students, so that there's an ongoing care between the student and the teacher. So, and student to student. So there definitely is that. I want to mention as well, your question earlier with you mentioned to Laura and the other speakers about the things that we can do, strategies we can do to probably in the spirit of improvisation get a good start on our school year in September. A couple of little things that I'd like to put out to that is number one, we have a lot of self-interests. We all do. We have things that interest us as professionals on two fronts in particular, education and music. I'm sure we can all remember that first time that we learned a blues scale and you said, wow, a blues, that's what that is? That's a blues scale, I can play it now? Or the first time you learned to play a chord on the guitar, or the first time you did something. And then all of a sudden you've got that technique and you've got that skill then that you can then do something, take you to the next step. Well, in education, we have the same situation. We're at a point right now where there are probably things that you, as an educator, would like to explore. And that interest that you have, you can make that part of the foundation that can follow through the whole year. So while there are things changing around us all the time, if you identify some things that you would like to focus on professionally for your own professional development, you could try to let that carry on through the year. What is that? Maybe it's ORF, maybe it's more solfege, hand signs, if we can do some speaking and singing. Maybe there's some electronic music you want to work into. Maybe it's some guitar work you want to move into. There's all kinds of things. So it might be a good opportunity now to take a baby step toward an interest you may have and start rolling that through your work throughout the year. So, and I say that in trying to establish foundations for yourself, because there are a lot of things changing, and it's like we hear that like Laura Lee said, that the rules are changing every day. Our restrictions are changing every day. And the same thing here in Newfoundland and Labrador. So as the things change, we need to have foundational things in our practice that we can rely on. So that if they say, okay, now we've got to have it online. Now we've got to move into this. You've got to do this, got to do that. We will always have foundational things. I don't know what they are for every single person, but I know for myself, there are certain things that I'd like to explore more in my practice. And I'm going to try to make these things foundational because number one, it's going to improve me as a teacher, but number two, it's interest of me. It's an interest. So while things are getting in despair, I have this shining light of, I'm getting to explore more composition. I never did. And I want to do more of that. So I want to explore that with my students. So I'm going to try to do more composition throughout the year. And that's something that can make me excited. No matter what changes around me, I still have that interest, that new thing that I'm exploring. So I would suggest that teachers try to do that. Try to identify some baby step things, some small things that you can maybe focus on throughout the year something that'll get you going in the morning. Even though there's big changes, you can say, yeah, but you know what? I'm getting to do some composition work with my students. And I've never been able to do that before, but I'm going to do it now. So I would suggest that as a little thing to help you along, brighten your day.
Any responses to that?
I also have to say, too, that the three speakers they say so many eloquent things. When you're the last to speak on a topic, it's like, yeah, they've all said that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, on the bright side, Andrew, you kind of set us up nicely to move on to what I wanted to talk about next, which was, we kind of started by saying we kind of know what the situation is going to be. We have the information we have right now, but as we know, it's probably going to change. So like you were saying, Andrew, you can kind of create these milestones, these baseline things for yourself. But do any of the panelists have any other thoughts to share around, what happens if there's an outbreak at your school and you kind of have to pivot again? How are we kind of bracing ourselves for this so it's least disruptive for the student experience?
If I can speak to that for a second, Nick,
yeah.
One of the things that I would say about that is that I would encourage teachers to think low-hanging fruit, to think the things that you're going to accomplish in the easiest way. And I think it might have been Laura Lee mentioned it earlier, but there's certain things that you just kind of don't have to dig too deep, but you just say, you know what, this concept, this is something I can do. I can do it anywhere, anyhow. It's pretty straightforward. We're going to do that concept. And this concept is going to be difficult if this is the case. And if that's the case, that's going to be difficult to do. Okay, let's put that concept aside. So you take your curriculum outcomes and you cherry pick The ones that are comfortable for you, going to be easy to pull off in a variety of different scenarios that we're put into, and then have that in your back pocket. So that way, then there'll be less frustration for you. And I keep coming back to the teacher, because you know, when you see on the airplane, they say, if in case of an in-flight emergency, put your mask on yourself first before you put the mask on your child. That's because you want to be safe so that you can be strong enough to help the child. Same thing here. I think that we need to make sure that we keep ourselves healthy, mentally and physically, of course, during this. And that means choosing the outcomes from our curriculum that are things that we are going to be able to do no matter what the scenario. So that way you're not going, holy cow, we're pivoting into what am I going to do now? You don't want to be in that situation. Have things laid out for yourself so you can easily go down through your list and you can be comfortable in what you're going to be able to deliver.
Absolutely. Catherine, Jewel, Laura-Lee, are there any of those that you can expand on? Yeah, go ahead. Laura-Lee.
I think knowing going into September that there's a very strong chance that we will have to pivot. I think that's something that if you don't already use one of the online learning platforms, but you were forced to do it in April, I think it would be wise to set up a Google Classroom, set up your Brightspace or D2L class, or if you're into using a website, get that communication to the students, get them signed up so that they know where to go. I think that will alleviate some of the stress. There will still be stress though. I think also, I found that when we moved to the emergency distance learning, I tried to do some stuff and it may have worked, it may not have worked. I might have had a little bit of engagement, whatever. And then I found that as the days and the weeks went on, I thought, you know what, I just need to find out what these kids what are they feeling kind of thing. So I just ended up using a Google form once a week, kind of like a check-in. And the kids told me what sort of it was not anonymous. I knew who was sharing the information, but because it was an online form, I found that in some cases they were pretty honest. Like some kids were saying that they just can't be bothered to do whatever. Or, their parent was working at the hospital and there was an outbreak or a positive case was in the hospital. And so now they're nervous. And so they're not able to complete whatever X, Y, or Z was. I also asked them if they felt that the workload was too much, too little, if they liked the ideas. And from there, I kind of figured out on the spot that the way I had organized things wasn't easy for them because they couldn't. Google Classroom, there's a toggle switch where you can turn off your assignments from stream so that the kids actually have to go to the assignment area, which I find is more useful than them going to the stream, especially if you have a couple of different parts for the week. So like little organizational tips, I think were things that I found. And it was just, trial and error, basically, which again goes to improvisation. You're trying a lick, it worked, it didn't work. You're trying, this new little chord progression, you want to throw in another note and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. But one thing that I found really worked, but I have to flesh it out a little bit more to make sure if we have to do written exams, this is where you have to really think a little bit more so, but at the time it worked. Choice boards. I use them a lot in my classes, and the students could take a choice from week to week of what they wanted to do. So the students really seem to appreciate that choice. And if some kids wanted to do more of the playing aspect, there was the opportunity for them. If they wanted to do some songwriting, they had that opportunity for some of the weeks. Where I need to sort of sit down and figure it out is making sure that through the choices, they can meet all of the overall expectations, and I would be able to create an exam if that's where we're going. And I'm not sure if we actually have to do exams. I can't remember based on some of the reading. So that's something I have to learn myself.
Thanks, Laura-Lee. Yeah, Jewel.
So I like what Laura-Lee said about making it changing, because not everybody's going to be wanting to do the same thing. Some kids are super engaged. I had some kids who posted every day, and I had some that I never heard of never heard from for the entire 3 months that we were off. And when you're looking at, especially for the younger grades, I mean, it's a little bit different in middle school and high school and onlines. Not all my kids are tech savvy, and some of them didn't have equipment. So our school division actually supplied them with iPads that were returned on June 30th and gave them free Wi-Fi for that time that we were off, which was really amazing. So then they really could all connect. But just getting them not always to do screen time things too. I found that, we know these kids do a lot of screen time already. So there were lots of fun activities like Chrome Lab and those things that they could get onto and create. But then I had them writing out, I sent them little videos of some dictation that I wanted them to do. And then I said, find something in your house to create the rhythms with. Some of them went to pencil and paper, which was fine. But then I had lots of kids who really went, they'd have all their stuffies lined up, or they had candies with, or pencils with erasers for the note heads. And I had one young boy who did a whole Lego one for me, along with a legend in case I couldn't understand his Lego. And they were really creative. So they really worked outside their thinking box. It wasn't something that we would usually do in the classroom. I mean, we write rhythms and we do them on paper, we do them on the whiteboard, we do them on our portable little whiteboard papers. I use popsicle sticks at school a lot. So for them to create their own things, I had them made out of cutlery and all kinds of things that they found. And if we're having to go online, we can connect with our classroom teachers too, because so much of our areas can be taught with music, can be supported with music. History and social studies and language arts and math and all of your arts, and all of those can be helped along with music as well. So I think for me, and I know that in our discussions with some other people that I've talked to, if you're looking at your plan that you're going to do, your lessons that you're going to write, make sure that you've got an alternative kind of option for if we have to go back out online. And I think Andrew was saying to reach out to your band or your provincial groups. I know that our Manitoba Music Educators Association, they've put out two great documents, all about one going back to school, and another one with some lessons on it or strategies for how you can teach some of your core curricular stuff in music, but being in a different and more creative and improvised way. And, reach out and get ideas from other people too. And listen to your kids. Sometimes your kids will give you some amazing ideas. Well, why don't you try this online? Because they know I'm not always tech savvy, but they'll give you some good ideas too.
That's something that I liked about what you said, Jewel, and I think Laura Lee as well, is just taking the time to talk to your students, taking the time to reflect on what you're doing, even though it might seem so frantic and busy and it's crazy because you're adjusting and you're moving online. If we take some time, kind of reach out to our students, see how they're doing, think about how things are going for us, what's working and what's not. That will allow us to be even more responsive.
Engaging them in that conversation through Seesaw or whatever, respond back to them without that was a good job, but really engage them. That really helped with a lot of the students too. So
cool. Thanks, Jewel. What about you, Catherine?
Okay, so much. Okay, so well, I think planning for adaptation and this level of variability is it's the art and the bread and butter of teaching, right? It's what we do, and then you add the subject. But before that is that level of design. And so, what are we designing for? Right, a lesson? No. Music? Maybe. I'd like to go as far as say we're designing for little humans to learn, and so we need to know, just like you said, Andrew, we need to know what captures their attention, what keeps them motivated. That my music educators, I know a whole bunch of you out there. Hello, I'm in my district. They're all watching right now. I'm humbled by them because they talked a lot about that keeping students motivated and how hard that was, where you sort of have that honeymoon period and then you have the implementation dip where you start losing because it's hard to sustain when you're not together. I know that. So we're designing for humans. We need to know how they make sense of information, what keeps them interested, how they want to communicate. how they want to create and express what they have. So I do have sort of a like a takeaway, like four sort of areas to think about when you're designing for your little humans, and it bodes really well for music education, and that is that sort of container around creating and exploring. So like Andrew says, no matter where you are, whether you're in the building, Laura Lee, or whether you're online, like you said, how are we going to create and how are we going to explore? We're going to compose, or we're going to explore a new jazz chord or a new blues chord. So these bigger languages, rather than the tiny, like rather than the little trees in the forest, the forest, right? So we got one container would be explore and create. Another might be around performing and practicing. So we may not be performing a lot this year live, but we can definitely perform more virtually, and we can practice and we can show and document over time how we've progressed. And technology really lends itself to that. Here I am, day one. You know, part of me hates before and after videos of like of things, right? Or before and after postings of pictures, like here I am before and here I am after. But actually in music education, it's really awesome. Here I was day one with my scale, and here I am day 20, and I can document that. So perform and practice, sort of explore and create, perform and practice. Another one would be around respond and share. So I'm going to respond to someone else. I'm going to share to other great musicians, other ethnomusicology, other areas of music, other genres, and I'm going to explore and create. And then finally, the fourth one would just be around connecting. And that's what you all said, the relationships, keeping us as a community. You said, Andrew, right at the beginning, like, hello, my music educators, you're all there. And same with those classes. They're all apart, but they're together. So if we can sort of have those big containers and then see how we fit into it in the context that we're in right now, I think there can be a lot of power around that.
Great. Thank you, Catherine. Any thoughts stemming from that before we move on? Yeah, go ahead, Andrew.
Well, one of the things that just, I'm this is a no-brainer, I'm sure, for everybody out there. It's the communication with the students, you know, getting the feedback. A long time ago, I got to play with this fiddle player who was 91 years old, Mr. Hutchings. And when he was very young, he used to play at the dances in Whitburn, Newfoundland. And when I played with him, he was 91 and he was on fire at 91. And he played so fast and so rhythmic. And he was saying, well, that's because I played at dances. That's what I did all the while I played. When I was young, I played at dances. So he said, if you didn't play rhythmically, and didn't play danceably, then you wouldn't be asked back the next week to play. So he said, I would be watching toes. He said, I always be watching toes while I'm playing. If toes aren't tapping, then I'm not doing a very good job. Well, we got to watch the students' toes. We got to watch your toes. And the best way to do that is through, you know, talking with students or journal writing and all things like that. They can reflect and we can see what their reflection is, you know, so we can watch their toes all the time. One of the things that Laura Lee said, I think it was Laura Lee said, and I do this as well. Every student would get like a Google Doc, say, of their own, that would have some tops of tree outcomes. And I would ask the students, every student, in your own document, how do you want to achieve outcome A, outcome B, outcome C, outcome D? How do you want to do these? And this is going to be a living document throughout the whole year. And so the students they can say, well, I'm going to do it this way. But the next student may do something completely different. But I'm watching these documents all the time, and I can see their reflection. And the way that they plan on achieving these outcomes changes all the time. Because as they get a new skill, they say, oh, wait a second, I could do that to help me with this other outcome. So they're massaging their outcome, the way they're going to achieve the outcomes all the way through. Very individualized, but it also gives me a clear view of their toes. Because if they're having a poor time, then this document is going to be crazy. Some students, I've got to talk it through with them. Some students are happy to write it out. But everybody works through their own curriculum documentation on how they're going to achieve all the outcomes. But I would encourage everybody to try to find whatever ways they can to give feedback from the students. And I'm saying that because my students are online. And Nick, you asked me earlier about how we connect with the students. Well, this is how we do it. And, you know, on an online setting, it has to be very, very deliberate. We have to think it through. We can't just meet somebody in the hallway and say, hey, what did you think of class today? You can't do that online. You have to do it through an email. You have to do it through some kind of document. You have to do it through some kind of journal or something. So, you know, we had to be very deliberate about how we communicate. But we need to see their toes all the time. And as soon as we lose sight of their toes, we're flying blind. We have no idea if what we're doing is working. So I would encourage in these trying times is to ratchet up the communication and the reflection with the students. So you're really seeing what they're thinking. Are they getting this? Are they engaging? Are they anxious about something? You know, are they having a good time or not? Be deliberate about it. I have to online. So you may be not online, but be very deliberate about how you're gathering that information.
Absolutely. Yeah, go ahead, Laura Lee.
And I think sort of to sum up what a lot of people have been saying, I think one of the things we should focus on, at least for the first week or the first few days when we see our students, is just building that community within our class. Because I think if we build that community while we're first with them, then we can continue building and continuing that sense of community with whatever pivot we have to make, or pivots. And I think it'll be pivots for this year. So, you know, think outside the box, think of interesting, fun things. If that's Kahoots, if that's here, let's share some tunes that are kind of interesting to listen to, or some neat videos, like whatever will work. And maybe just bring in your personalities, tell those weird jokes, or whatever the case may be.
Laura Lee, you don't tell weird jokes, do you? You don't have weird jokes, do you?
Yeah, and they're bad. They don't laugh.
Further to your point too, Laura Lee, is that when we go back into the classroom, and if I'm walking into my grade 1s, so my kindergartens are new, I haven't met them yet. We have that unique opportunity. I teach them kindergarten through grade 5. So by the time they're in grade 4 or 5, I've known them for 5 years, 4 or 5 years already. And I've been teaching them for a long time. So when they're coming back in and they're coming to school feeling really nervous, and they're meeting their brand new classroom teacher for the first time, you can walk in and they go, oh, well, I know you. And, you know, you've got your few new students who start and register. Actually, we're amalgamating 2 schools this year. So we have about 90 new students starting at our school this year. So it's going to be a bit stressful for them. But for those students who are there from last year, they're going to walk in, and when you come in the classroom, they're going to go, oh, I know what to expect from you, and stuff. So I think we're in that unique situation of getting to know our students quite well over the course of several years. So.
Thanks, Jewel. Laura Lee, I just wanted to go to you because I have a few questions that were coming in just, you know, from my conversations with a lot of teachers even before this, were because I love this idea of achievable outcomes and kind of having those set out so those can achieve kind of the worst case scenario, which is that you're completely online, that there are like all these restrictions, all these changes to format. So for each band, what are a couple achievable outcomes you can set out for yourself at the beginning of the school year that will make sense even when we transition to online? Is that just focusing on the different elements of music, or?
I think, like, first and foremost, I think I want the students to have fun. So that's like the biggest thing, is make sure that they're having fun watching their toes. Only maybe it'll be, well, we used to watch them smile, but I guess that might be challenging wearing masks. But we'll figure out other ways to make sure that they're having fun. But I think, you know, if one of the things that I'm thinking of is some composition, well, what are some different ways that I can do composition? Certainly, I can always revert to pencil and paper, but are there other ways to do that? If we're looking at the elements of music, how, without a band instrument, which is what I normally teach, can I have them apply those elements of music to their playing? So, you know, I'm thinking through percussion, through found sound, through body percussion, those kinds of things that they could do that sort of creating. So it's just coming up with sort of, as Catherine said, those bigger ideas, you know, composition, and then just sort of jotting down a few things, and then I'll see where the mood or the class takes me. Because again, I don't know who's in my class. So maybe I have my beginner grade 9s. I don't know them, like Jewel. I've never met them before. They've never met me. So if I can build the community, and then we'll see where those things take me in my class. So kind of playing it by ear, but knowing that I want to meet, I want us to do this and I want us to do this. How can I do it in a few different ways? I don't know if it was someone here was saying that, when we pivot, maybe it was Andrew that said you've got like three ideas that you can easily meet or easily achieve in 3 different ways. So that's great. Maybe the things that you can only think of achieving it one way, do that when it makes the most sense to you. But I think this year, we know this is going to be a weird year, like last year was a weird year. And I think, I don't think we should get bogged down on all of the nitty gritty details, and just sort of work with what you've got in the means that you have and deal with it that way. And, that's the best that we can do in this weird and wacky situation, I think.
Amen to that. Yeah, Jewel?
And as much as we want, we've got all these goals and we have a curriculum to teach, we also have to let them have some fun. One of the biggest responses I got, now it was in mid-May, I think it's May 14th, is International Chicken Dance Day. And I put that out as a challenge to kids to come and show me their chicken dance. I had so much response from it, everything from kids getting dressed up as chickens and creating costumes and getting their whole family and babies dancing with it too. And was there a music lesson in there? I wasn't going for a specific music lesson. It was like, let's just have some fun. We've been under a lot of stress. We're all doing our seesaw activities and trying to catch up with math and language arts and doing science at home and everything. But let's just have some fun today. So today's assignment is show me your best chicken dance. And I had a great response from that one. So they need to be able to have some fun at the same time as they're learning something. And so they did. I mean, they were learning form and they were learning to follow the instructions. And so there is an underlying lesson, but I wasn't looking for a specific goal. So it's hard for the kids to always be on all the time, as we know, as we see in the classroom as well. So just let them have some fun sometimes.
I didn't know there was a chicken dance day. I had no idea.
Whole day.
I do believe it's May the 14th, I do believe that it is International Chicken Dance Day.
Well, I'm going to write it in my plan book now.
Andrew, I'll be looking for the video.
Something else too, if we want to talk about specifics, like things that could, oh, my little dog is going crazy over here. If you think about things that are probably a low-hanging fruit that we can pull out of our backpack at a moment's notice, would be listening skills as well.
Listening right now?
Yeah. Yeah, listening skills. So I always have a series of these. Oh my!
Great improvisation.
Cherry on top.
There you go. Yeah. So anyway, but if no matter what the grade level is, I'm sure we can devise listening activities and listening skills that we could have in our back pocket. So you may have a few ideas and games and little activities they can do to be a lot of fun, educational, directed listening that you could easily roll in no matter what the scenario. So just that's a little specific. I'm gonna go see what he wants.
No problem. Catherine, it looked like you were wanting to say a little something.
Sometimes we know that the best way to show that you know something is to teach, right? So having our students take advantage of the technologies that they have and create, be the teacher and provide little video streams or little TikToks, as if you want to get in their language, of teachable skills that then they can share with the group, can be really powerful, because then they have to plan for it, they have to record it, and then they have to share it. This summer I was doing some summer school, and we did a fine arts program, and we were, as I taught over and over again, we kept adding and adding on of what the what the world's best singer would look like, right? Because there's so much skill in the way the way you hold your face and your body and your voice and your vocal cords, and we kept adding on to that and adding on to that, and then we looked for evidence for it when the kids sang on visually on screen, and then we asked kids to actually teach it, and it was pretty powerful. The little videos that they had about this is what my eyebrows do, and this is what my cheekbones do, and this is what my torso does, and those kids will never forget. And then when I was watching them sing, I could name it, and we all had common language. So creating some common language, and creating fun ways using their speak, like make a TikTok. Like, how exciting is that, right, for kids to do? And finally, I just wanted, I cannot go without talking about creating a sense of belonging and identity. And there's a lot of research to say that if kids have a sense of belonging, then they feel more connected, and that's through their identity of who they are. So finding out who your little learners are, and then asking yourself, how do you nurture that sense of belonging and identity? And I do want to do a shout out to music education, because I think we have a very lucky and a very beautiful thing that we own, and that is that we have the identity and the belonging of the group. We have the interdependence of myself, that I belong here, but we also have the genre that, for inexplicably, for some reason, we know, but for kids, they don't maybe know yet, that music in and of itself is a place of belonging. So we have that, and we want to leverage that, because the more that they can name that, and the more that we can be transparent of you having a sense of belonging, then this music class and music online will become a place where they want to be, because they feel that sense of connection.
Yeah, and that dovetails into a question that we got from a viewer that's basically asking, how can I advocate for my music program if my administrator is skeptical about music's ability to be effective in this new reality? And, I think, Catherine, you kind of nailed it on the head, talking about, music is so uniquely able to foster belonging, and that now more than ever is so important for our students. But, if you've got a tough administrator who's really skeptical, what are some tactics that can be leveraged to advocate for music's importance in this time? Yeah, go ahead, Catherine.
I just think the first step in building networks and building advocacy is right down to brass tacks in it. That is the narrative. That's the story. We have knowledge. We as music educators have knowledge, and we can give that knowledge of why music education is so important. But I also think we need to beg and receive that from the people we're trying to work with. So to find the stories, ask them to find the stories of where music education or music has been powerful in their family, in their own personal lives, and then echo that, to hear the stories. I can't tell you how many tears I've seen stroll down people's faces when I ask them to talk about how music has been powerful in their lives. And I think those stories don't have to necessarily be as being a performer, but can also be as a receiver of a gift of music, in being part of an experience. The more we can create those stories, now we create a platform of why, that inexplicable feeling within of why music is so important. And then we can start moving forward with a platform of reason, of strategizing what we can do. And so we need to give, but we also need to receive, and we can't forget that.
Thanks, Catherine. Any other ideas behind, what to do in music program at your school is potentially on the line in this moment?
I think we also have
go ahead.
Catherine
go ahead,
saying, sorry,
yeah.
I just
You're
interrupted.
good.
Is that the social emotional side of our kids too? Like, they've been under a lot of emotional and social stress, and music is so important for doing all of that too. And there's a lot of information out there about that. And I know that for our province here in Manitoba, the MMEA created this amazing document that we've all forwarded on to our administrators, just to say, this is why music is important in our schools. Forward it on to your administrator and onto your superintendents or whoever else you need to put it, give it out to, or even give it to your classroom teachers. Say, this is why. I don't just sit in my room and make noise all day. I really work on all of these kinds of things and how much benefit it is for the students. And, you know, or if you're not from Manitoba, you can go on that website and look at that document and then take some things from that as well, because it's not specific to Manitoba. We just happen to create it in Manitoba, but it goes across the country. So anybody's welcome to look at that Manitoba Music Educators Association website, and it's right there. There's 2 documents right there. So
thanks, Jewel. Laura Lee and Andrew, I know that, you know, because I've heard, you know, you told me about it a little bit, you've both kind of been on the ground advocating to stakeholders about the importance of music education. What do each of you find resonates with decision makers when talking about the importance of music education in this moment?
I think sometimes you have to look at the bigger picture. And although our ultimate goal is music in the school by qualified music instructors and making sure that everyone has access to music and that we have lots of funding so we can do lots of really cool and fun things, you can't come out the door, out the race with that statement. You have to be able to back it up with stuff. So I think you have to sort of look at the audience, know the audience, and I think over the years, if you, when you're doing music in whatever way you're doing it, inviting in your administrator, inviting some of the board people into things that you're doing is a great way to advocate. But to also share what Jewel said, there's some great advocacy tools by different organizations across the province as well. So most of the provinces have their own Music Educators Association. So you can search them first. But we also have in Canada the Coalition for Music Education Canada, and they also have an advocacy branch. But then within that, in our provinces, in Ontario anyway, we have the Ontario Music Educators Association, but then we have a number of affiliates who also have a number of resources for us. So we have the Ontario Band Association, the Ontario String Association. Both of those organizations have also been producing advocacy items and sharing them on social media and or sharing them with various school boards. So I know we've been trying to get things out that way, but I think also another advocacy tool is you need to find out what the students want and get their voice heard. So I know last year at the end of the school year, the OMEA asked teachers if they could ask their students a couple of questions and then just share the data with us. So that's data that we now have. And interesting enough, the OMEA was part of a conference call with OFIA, which is the phys ed organization. And they were asking, like, what are we doing kind of thing. So we shared that we have the framework and who we've shared it with, which is pretty well everybody. And other people have gotten their hands on it that we didn't realize it was being shared to, which is totally fine. It's open for anybody to use. But they were like, oh, they need to look at the student voice piece. They didn't have any, but we were able to say, well, actually, we do have the student voice piece.
You have that ready. Yeah.
We're just waiting for the right time, the right moment. Right now, it's not necessarily the right time for that. Like we need to know what these plans are moving forward before we can sort of look at that. So we have to look at the bigger picture. So right now, there's been challenges within different school boards saying that there would be no music. So a pause on music. So we've advocated that, can you clarify, is the pause instrumental and vocal? But music still occurs. And so we've won a few of those battles, which is great, because we want to keep music in the schools. We want to make sure that if teachers rather are repurposed currently, or their rooms are repurposed currently, that those rooms will come back later on. So again, it's every little bit, you just got to keep working and, plugging away at all of those things.
Thanks, Laura Lee. We are almost out of time, but I just wanted to pivot back to Andrew. If you have any closing ideas or any ideas around this advocacy conversation that we're having before we wrap things up.
Well, well said, Laura Lee. There's I guess there's 2 points that I'd like to make to teachers out there. Well, maybe there's more than 2. First of all, who you're speaking to, you need to know. You need to just be aware of their language, of who you're speaking to. because an administrator in your school may have certain needs and will need to be assured of certain things. Whereas if you're speaking to a superintendent, it may be different, or if you're speaking to a parent representative, it may be a different. The end goal may be the same, but the way it's presented would be a little different. I do find that sometimes lost in translation happens because we're all very passionate about music and music education, and we can wax poetic about the value that it brings to the child's life. But sometimes the people who are pitching this to, that's not what they need to hear. They need to hear maybe some things that are a bit more utilitarian, or maybe it's focused directly on safety, or whatever the discussion is. So just be aware of who you're speaking to and what they need to be hearing. One thing I'd like to say, like Laura mentioned, that there are some great organizations across Canada, both provincially and nationally, that are doing fantastic work, no doubt whatsoever. Lean on that. They're there to help you. So go to the Manitoba Music Educators Association site, and go to the OMEA, go to the Newfoundland Labrador Music Special Interest Council site, talk to people and get the information from them so you can be equipped. But the last point I want to make about that is be equipped. I've been watching lately, even when we started this discussion, people were writing up, what are you doing in your class? What's everybody doing? What are you doing in your classroom? Everybody's asking this. And what I'm seeing come up a lot in these public discussions is people are saying, my administrator and I sat down and worked it out. That's what I'm hearing a lot of in Newfoundland Labrador, is that music teachers saying, my administrator and myself, we worked it out together. I gave a proposal to my administrator. Be prepared for that discussion. Don't wait for your administrator to come to you and say, what do you want to do? What do you think we should do with your music program? Have that ready now. Get a package, get a folder, write a little letter saying music's valuable, make it like a half-page letter, have some research that you can get from your association, stick it in your little folder so that when your administrator asks you, what do you want to do? Or why should we? Then you can say, because we have this, and you can pull out the information from the coalition. You can put out some information from MusiCounts, or you can pull out some stuff from your local association. But be equipped, be ready, because that discussion will happen. And if you're thinking about on the local level, it's going to happen with you. You're going to be the teacher that has had that discussion. So if you're not prepared, then you may have your tongue on your chin, not knowing what to say, and I don't really, it's good, music's good, we should have music. You don't want to be that. You want to be somebody who's got all your ducks in a row. So take the time now to put together a little package, and then be ready for when that discussion happens, and you will get results.
Good. Results are a good place to stop, I think. Results are good, especially now. I wish we could keep talking because I can kind of tell everyone has so much to say. But I know that some people got to run because we were running a little bit late getting this thing off the ground. So first, I wanted to thank all of our amazing panelists for taking the time to have this national dialogue about music education in this very precarious time. Thank you all so much. This was a very productive conversation. And to everyone who is watching, thank you for your patience as we work to get this sorted. Yeah. Were you going to say something?
Can I end with just a little quote I wanted to share with everybody?
Of course.
One of my favorite artists. I have his book, and he's just glorious. His name's Charles Maxey. You don't need to read the words; just look at the picture. Got this little. I don't know if you know Charles Maxey. He's amazing, and he says, "It says I can't see a way through," said the boy. "Can you see your next step?" says the horse. "Yes." "Then just take it."
Very cool.
So you don't need to see all your way through. You just need to see your next step and take it. You can do it, everybody. Like it's not going to be easy, but we can do it. And thank you, Nick and MusiCounts, for creating a venue and a forum for us to come together. It's really powerful. We're very fortunate to have to have you and your organization.
It's our pleasure. And before we end, I'll just do a plug for our next town hall, which we will have a plan A, plan B, plan C for in the event that the technology doesn't work. But that's going to be all about decolonizing music education and thinking about all the Western biases that are seated in how music education is traditionally approached in Canada, and talking about how we can work to begin dismantling that and making our education, our music rooms, a little bit more inclusive and more diverse and reflective of the needs of our students and reflective of the needs of this moment. So with that being said, I will let the four of you go. Thanks again, and have a great night, folks. See you later.